Hi guys, how you going? Campbell here from Autodidactic Channel. Hope you're having a splendid day. And of course, autodidactic means to be self-educated, and in this world, especially in these crazy times that we are experiencing, we really do need to be self-educated. And that means getting as many points of view as we can, as many different perspectives on a story, so that we can come to our own conclusions. And of course, in this channel I talk a lot about history and how the history that we're given is not really the history that happened. It is his story, it's not our story. And this is why we really need to do our own research, ask our own questions, and come up with our own answers so that we can start to work out what has actually happened in the past and how we got here. Because as they say, if you do not learn from the past, you are destined to repeat it. And today I wanted to get into the history of wars and how basically, this earth has been in perpetual war pretty much for about 500 years now. And this is something that's not a human trait. It's something that's been imposed on us. And we're taught a lot about the wars from last century, World War I and II and Vietnam, but we're not taught a lot about the wars that have happened in the past. And there is probably good reason for that. So let's get into some of the wars from the past. Alright, and here we are on Wikipedia, and this is just to show you guys, this is a list of wars from 1500 to 1799. And of course that time frame, of course 1800, not long after that we started to see, we had 1812 and everything that happened around 1812, and then 1850s with the world fairs, and then we hit, the American Civil War, and basically we've had war ever since then as well. But yeah, the 1500s as well is in this story of, resets and mud floods, etc. The 1400s seem to be the time period where something happened, where, the cataclysm or the first cataclysm or whatever has happened, and basically the takeover. So if you look at this from 1500, it looks like something's happened and then it's just been war after war after war. And of course wars are just to take over territory, to destroy the past and to wipe out the populations. Wars are not really what we're told they are. They've got a lot more to do with destroying history than they do with, what we're told, this statism stuff. So here we go. This is a list of wars, and I'm just going to scroll through. Just look at this yellow one here, the Holy Roman Empire. You will no doubt notice that symbol, the double-headed eagle. And this is Victoria's parties. These are the Holy Roman Empire, they're like an army out there killing people. So that's where the Vatican came from, guys. Here they are again, the Papal States. I find that quite funny, really. Go out there and spread the love, while you're killing people and destroying civilization. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to scroll through this. This is 300 years of war. Okay, that was 100 years. Now we're into the 1600s. And you can see it's mainly Europe, but there's also the Americas start to get into here. 1600s still going. Then we hit the 1700s. And just look at all these wars. I mean, literally just non-stop wars. over the place. So is that not ridiculous? Alright, so where I wanted to start is with something that's called the 9 Years' War. It's also known as World War Zero. And the 9 Years' War was fought between 1688 and 1697, often called the War of the Grand Alliance or the War of the League of Augsburg. It was a conflict between France and a European coalition which mainly included the Holy Roman Empire. You see, they're holy because they go out and they put holes in people with their guns and knives. So yeah, it included the Holy Roman Empire, the Dutch Republic, England, Spain, Savoy, and Portugal. It was fought in Europe and surrounding areas, in North America and in India. It is sometimes considered the first global war. The conflict encompassed the Williamite War in Ireland and the Jacobite risings in Scotland, where William III and James II struggled for control of England and Ireland, and a campaign in colonial North America between French and English settlers and their respective indigenous allies, today called King William's War by Americans. So this is a war that was worldwide. Again, here we have the Holy Roman Empire. Oh, they're everywhere, putting holes in people. So this was a world war, as it says. It was fought in Europe, North America, and India. So on 3 different continents. So it truly was a world war, and all these nations were in it. And if we look here, it was pretty much, it says France against all these other, France on its own by the looks of it. So what does that mean? Was France defending itself as the last, bastion of the old world? Because look who we have against it. The Dutch, of course, Dutch East India Company. England, say no more. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Spain, of course, the whole Spain story, with, the whole Moors and the takeover and, the whole whitewashing. If you look into the art, pretty dodgy stuff. Portugal's pretty much the same. So all these, places that we know are still run by these, those who wish to rule us and wish to be rulers, they're all these countries, all against France. So what happened there? Because of course this is the late 1600s, and in the 1700s we then get the French Revolution, where they behead all their royals, all their royal family. So again, what the story we're told was that it was the people, revolting against, the oppression put on them by the ruling class, let them eat cake and all that kind of stuff. But was the story something different? Because looking at this war, it looks like everyone was in trying to take out France. Did they not do that and then sort of usurp and go through the bottom way, create a revolution, and then knock off the royal family so that they could take it over? Who knows? Just a thought that came to me. When you start to look at this history, nothing they tell us really makes much sense at all. So this was a complete world war in the late 1600s. So again, this is, what are we talking, sort of a couple of 100 years out, in the sort of the timeline that I can work out. We're talking sort of 250, 200 years out from the cataclysm. And, they're spreading out and they're sort of going out, and at this point they've found the new lands, they've found the Americas and stuff, and it looks like they're going into, wipe out the old ruling classes. That's what it looks like. The main fighting took place around France's borders in the Spanish Netherlands and the Rhineland, the Dutch of Savoy and Catalonia. The fighting generally favoured Louis XIV's armies, but by 1696 his country was in the grip of an economic crisis. The maritime powers, England and the Dutch Republic, were also financially exhausted, and when Savoy defected from the alliance, all parties were keen to negotiate a settlement. by the terms of the Treaty of Ryswick. Louis XIV retained the whole of Alsace, but in exchange had to return Lorraine to its ruler and give up any gains on the right bank of the Rhine. Louis XIV also recognised William III as the rightful king of England. So there you go, with the ailing and... Oh, hang on, let me read that. While the Dutch acquired a barrier fortress system in the Spanish Netherlands, star forts no doubt, to help secure their borders, while the ailing and childless Charles II of Spain's death, approaching a new conflict over the inheritance of the Spanish Empire was soon to embroil Louis XIV and the Grand Alliance in the War of the Spanish Succession. So there's another war. So when you look at this, okay, so this guy, Louis XIV, he was out there trying to take over other lands, didn't do too well, and he was basically fighting the maritime powers, right? The law of the sea, England and the Dutch. So Louis XIV, he was French. So again, was he sort of holding out against, the sea people, the Phoenicians basically, or what were we calling the Phoenicians? The sea people, the maritime law, the people who have sort of taken over and changed everything. Because he was fighting them, and then as you see, then they just start changing the rulers in Spain and that. And taking over, and this is what they do to usurp things. They get in there, they get in the ear of the ruler, they try, well, first they have a war. If they can't win, then they try economic sanctions to crush them. Then they get in, they get people in high powers to sort of start lying to these rulers. And then, of course, if they can't, take control of them that way, the rulers normally end up in an accident, or a revolution happens and they get taken out and replaced. And if you look through the artwork of the 1600s of the rulers in Europe, you will see that they, many of them seem to change colour and race as it goes sort of from the 1500s to the 1700s. And that's really what the Renaissance was. It was just the refacing of all the artwork. It was rebranding all the rulers, putting all the new rulers in place, and then giving us the pictures to make the story seem believable. So the 9 Years' War, this was in the 1700s. Now, what we get after the 1700s is the opening of Japan is what I'm going to cover next. So this is 1845. So it's about 100 years or 150 years later. But yeah, Japan. Japan is an interesting one because, of course, we're told that, we're given this whole story of the whole sort of Japanese infrastructure and the samurai and their codes and, the swords that are folded 100 times and all this stuff. It's pretty much, a rich kind of cultural narrative we're given. But then we have these anomalies like the Anu, who are actually recognized as the original natives of Japan. And they are not what we are told Japanese people are. That they're not the same, race. They're not the same people. And then we also have, like a sunken, off the coast of Japan, Yonaguni, a sunken temple. And there's also massive temples. There's temples carved into the earth in Japan that are 3 stories down. Tons of stuff. So, of course, Japan was shut off from the world. It didn't want anything. So after all these wars, it was like, no, we're shutting our borders. We don't want you. Okay, so the opening of Japan, and you may know this story, basically in the 1840s is when the US Navy turned up, and they basically demanded that Japan open its borders to trade, under threat of war. And so in 1845, most of the people there didn't want to open, but they ended up, they got a new ruler and he opened up trade to the west, basically. And a bit of a history on Japan. It says Nagasaki was Japan's second oldest port open to foreign trade. It was the only Japanese port permitted by Tokugawa shogunate, or the military government, between 1639 and 1859, when all other ports were closed. Portuguese traders who introduced Roman Catholicism, the old Holy Roman Church, and guns to make the holes, to Japan, first arrived there in the mid-16th century. Soon after the introduction of Catholicism, large groups of Japanese converted to the new religion. Feeling threatened by this new faith, the shogunate began persecuting Christians, including 26 martyrs, 6 Franciscan missionaries, and 20 Japanese lay people, who were crucified in Nagasaki in 1597. The martyrs were canonized by the Vatican in 1862, building blah 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 in the Aurora Roman Catholic Church. So by the 1600s, tensions had risen to such a state that the Portuguese were expelled along with Protestant English. Trade was then restricted to the Dutch and to a lesser degree the Chinese and Koreans. Over the next 200 years, the rest of Japan was closed to the West. So again, that story, they have their own, society, their own beliefs and values, and these people come in on boats and introduce these new ideas, try and introduce a new religion, new weapons of war, guns, and basically the shogun, right or wrong, he decided that this influence was bad and he wanted to get rid of it. And so he did, and he shut the whole country down. And then it stayed closed for a couple of hundred years. And then when Nagasaki was fully open to the West in the 1850s, it became a major port for trade. It was a leading East Asian coaling station and served as the winter port of the Russian Asiatic fleet until 1903. So basically, they needed it as well, for trade and for a stopover, but basically once it was opened, we saw what happened in World War II, but before that, the shogunate, the Japanese Bakufa or Shogun-shoku government of the shogun, or hereditary military dictatorship of Japan, which was in control from 1192 to 1867. The term shogun appeared in various titles given to military commanders commissioned for the imperial government's 8th and 9th century campaigns against the Ezo tribes of northern Japan. So there you go, they're telling you right there was more than one peoples in Japan. On another side here it says, although the Americans employed some fairly heavy-handed tactics, the shogun presided over a long period of peace and relative prosperity in Japan. In fact, life was so peaceful and unchanging that eventually gave rise to the ukiyo, or floating world, a leisurely lifestyle enjoyed by urban samurai, wealthy merchants, and geishas. The floating world crashed down to earth suddenly in 1853 when the American Commodore Matthew Perry and his black ships appeared in Edo Bay. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the 60-year-old shogun, died soon after Perry's fleet arrived. His son, Tokugawa, agreed under duress to sign the Convention of Kanagawa. The following year, under the terms of the convention, American ships were given access to 3 Japanese ports where they could take on provisions, and shipwrecked American sailors were to be treated well. The sudden imposition of foreign power signaled the beginning of the end for Tokugawa. The sudden influx of foreign people, ideas, and money severely disrupted Japan's lifestyle and economy. In the 1850s and 1860s, as a result, Emperor Koma came out from behind the jeweled curtain to issue an order to expel barbarians. So basically, again, they wanted this influence of these people turning up on boats, wanting to trade and change everything. They wanted them gone. In 1864, however, it was too late for Japan to retreat once more into isolation. Anti-Western daimyo, particularly in the southern provinces of Koshu and Samusa, blamed the Tokugawa shogunate for failing to defend Japan against the foreign barbarians. Ironically, both the Oshu rebels and Tokugawa troops began programs of rapid modernization adopting many Western military techniques, the Southern AMO was more successful in their modernization than the Shogun was, and in 1866, Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu suddenly died. Of course he did, just suddenly. And Tokugawa Yoshinobu reluctantly took power. He would be the 15th and the last Tokugawa shogun. In 1867, the emperor also died, and his son became the new emperor. So, we get this story all the time. The changing of the guard, they turn up, the people in boats with their maritime law and their trade and all this kind of stuff. And they try and take over the country. They normally do. They just influx it with their ideas, change the culture, change the zeitgeist. And then if they can't change, the leaders suddenly die. It's very interesting. And of course now that, there is no shoguns or emperors or any, there's no emperor in Japan. Japan has now basically been turned into a Western, westernized country with westernized political system. So that was 1845. Now, if we jump forward a little bit into the future, what we find is something called the Great White Fleet. Now, the Great White Fleet was the popular nickname for the group of United States Navy battleships which completed a journey around the globe from 16 December 1907 to the 22nd February 1909 by order of the United States President Theodore Roosevelt. Its mission was to make friendly courtesy visits to numerous countries while displaying new US naval power to the world. Okay, yeah, so that's nice, isn't it? They wanted to make friendly courtesy visits, just like they did in Japan, while displaying their naval power. Yeah, hi, how you going? Yeah, we're your friends. Yeah, do what we say or we'll blow you up. It consisted of 16 battleships divided into 2 squadrons, along with various escorts. Roosevelt sought to demonstrate growing American military power and blue water navy capability. Blue water navy is basically deep ocean, so navies that can go, out across the oceans. Hoping to enforce treaties and to protect overseas holdings. So there you go again. We come in peace to enforce treaties and protect our overseas holdings, which basically is double speak for they're going out and basically taking land so they can build naval bases all over the world. So the United States Congress designated funds to build American naval power. There you go. Beginning in the 1880s with just 90 small ships, over 1/3 of them wooden and therefore obsolete. The Navy quickly grew to include new steel fighting vessels. The hulls of these ships were painted a stark white, giving the armada the nickname the Great White Fleet. So in the twilight of his administration, the US President Theodore Roosevelt dispatched 16 US Navy battleships of the Atlantic Fleet on a worldwide voyage of circumnavigation. The purpose of the fleet deployment was multifaceted. Ostensibly, it served as a showpiece of American goodwill. Gotta love that goodwill. As the fleet visited numerous countries and harbours, in this the voyage was not unprecedented. Naval courtesy calls many times in conjunction with birthdays of various monarchs and other foreign celebrations had become common in the 19th century. So basically what that's saying is, the ocean goers, the boat people, the Phoenicians, they're just slowly getting out there, taking over the world, building their little bases everywhere, getting into ports, opening, deals and contracts to make sure they get access in there. And then, of course, they worm their way into the government and into the ruling class and eventually take everything over. So did you know that there was the White Fleet traveling around the world in the early 1900s? Because this is the same story as we saw. The wars from the 1500s to 1699 were basically just consistent. And then, of course, from the 1700s to the 1850s, we had a lot of stuff going on, like the American Civil War. The Dutch East India Company was obviously going around the world trying to take people over. We had the colonisation of Australia and India, the UK, the English got into India, and all this stuff happening. Then up to 1845, when they decided they needed to get into Japan, and they got in there, and then, again, all the ruling class died within sort of 20 years of that happening, and they basically took over. And then, 50 years later, they're sailing around the world from America, calling into all the ports, making treaties, getting lands, visiting all the royals on their birthdays, to try and get in the good books. And this is the takeover, guys. This is the takeover. This is what happened. 500 years ago or so, give or take, something happened. And as far as I can work out, I'm not sure, we don't know if it was natural or if it was man-made, this event. But basically, these people in the boats, the boat people, they have just, jumped in and grabbed that opportunity to take over the world, while everyone's, in a state of disrepair, trying to rebuild their civilizations and everything. These guys go around and start making new treaties, get access into all these societies, and, take them over from within, just like the parasites that they are. And of course, here we are in 2020, and we've had wars again all through the 1900s, World War I, II, Vietnam, all this kind of stuff, Korea. And then, turned into terrorism, but it's this constant, we need division, we need an enemy, someone to be scared of. And then, of course, we need wars so that these people can go in and destroy history and take over countries. And that's really what this agenda is. And it's also, just as a side note, when they test nuclear bombs in the ocean underwater. Have you ever thought where they might be testing those? Because as we know, there's a lot of sunken stuff. There's a lot of temples, cities, stuff all over the place underwater. So is this what these, so-called testing of nuclear bombs is? Are they just destroying what's underwater as well? Because we saw, what, so-called ISIS did in Petra. And, it happens all over the place. They go around and they just destroy the past. They just destroy as much of it as they can, change the stories, mix it all up, shuffle it around so that we don't know where we are. And of course, here we are, 2020, and the whole story seems to be unraveling before our eyes. The veil is lifting. So it really is time for us to, to be self-educated, to make our own decisions, and to see the world with new eyes. And that those new eyes come from having more information so that we get new perspectives. So there we go. I just wanted to sort of cover that and how this really is, none of these wars are independent. They're all part of the same agenda that's been waged. The war is against us and against our story. That's what the war is. It's the parasites against us. So there you go. I'm not really ending on a positive note, but, like I said, it's all falling apart for them at the moment. They've got nowhere to run. They're being exposed. They're just, screaming and melting. And I heard Dustin Berserker Bear say, what was it? You're looking at the light thinking it's a train coming head on to you, but really it's the sun rising or something like that. But basically, so the message is, it may look really bad at the moment, and that's, of course, what's been thrown at us and what's been projected by the MSN and all these evil entities. But that's not the truth. They want us to think a train's coming, but something much better is coming, guys. So believe in that. Get as many perspectives as you can so that you can make your own decisions. Don't believe the MSN. Understand that if you watch that, you're only watching it to find out what is the truth, because everything they say is a lie. So there you go. We're almost there, guys. We are 19 days out from the 21st of December. So big things are going to happen. It's going to be an amazing year. There's massive stuff happening all over the place. With people reforming the law, with obviously, we've got barbarias coming up everywhere. We're still working on Pertharia, so I'm going to do an update on that soon. And of course, as always, thank you to all my subscribers, everyone who comments, likes and shares my videos. A big thank you to all my Patreons and people who contribute through PayPal and my merch store. And if you would like to support this channel, there are links below in the description. So thanks for spending some time with me, guys. Hope you enjoyed that one, and I shall talk to you all on the next upload. Bye for now.